Welcome to the Autism Society of Florida interview series. Each episode, we dive into real stories and meaningful conversations to support you on your autism journey. This month, we're talking about dual diagnosis and how understanding it can lead to better supports and brighter outcomes.
Good afternoon on this October afternoon, 2025, and it is Disability Employment Awareness Month. And this month, Autism Society of Florida and myself, Annette Lizardo, the new president, are highlighting dual diagnoses. And as we all know, the number of those diagnosed with autism has escalated over the years. So have the number of those who had a different diagnosis before getting perhaps their ASD, their autism spectrum disorder diagnosis. And I have such a friend with us here today, a longtime friend and advocate. I think our paths crossed about a decade ago due to our children's academic journey. So Barbara Beasley, please tell those audience members of ours listening who may not know you a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you became part of the autism community.
Well, thank you, Annette, for inviting me to join you today and share our family's journey. We've actually unknowingly been a part of the autism community for about 23 years. And it's a path we've navigated with resilience, with love, and unwavering commitment because my two children each have unique needs. And they've taught me a profound importance for advocacy, adaptability, and celebrating their individuality. My son, really briefly, is now thriving as a high functioning individual. He received his autism diagnosis at the age of 22, and he's 23 now. My daughter, Emily, began her journey with a seizure just after her sixth birthday. And then over the next 6 years, she was diagnosed with multiple forms of epilepsy, ADHD, anxiety, OCD, dyslexia, auditory processing disorder. And then at 13, she received her autism diagnosis. Now, interestingly, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we had genetic testing done, and that revealed that she has a rare disease called Beck-Farner syndrome. And that is a rare genetic condition caused by variants in the TET3 gene. And I wanted to mention this today because so many of the families that I have worked with as an advocate and as a home education parent fall into a lot of these similar characteristics. The condition is characterized by an intellectual disability, autism, ADHD, anxiety, seizures, and other challenges. And so currently it has no cure, but the diagnosis is really empowering us to tailor Emily's care and support to her unique needs.
And I think that's important for our listeners, Barbara, that you saw perhaps, these different signs and got different diagnoses, but really only recently, was there a new label, so to speak, that kind
Mhm.
of covered a lot of those characteristics and symptoms that you saw. So I do think this is an ever, um, evolving area, because, as we've seen, not everything fits nicely under one label or another. And I do think part of that is how the medical community advances, and there are more testing and different things available for those who may have one or more diagnoses. Um, can you describe a typical day in your lives? Perhaps accommodations Emily may have needed when she was younger, and I know she's very active now, as well. But basically, what do you think has helped her the most? From, you said the first seizure at 6, let's say, to, in the last decade or so, excuse me, what do you think has helped her the most, and what kind of accommodations do you have in place to help her reach her full potential and succeed?
Well, I think the most significant thing that we did was choose to remove her from a public school setting at the end of second grade. She spent most of first grade on hospital homebound because we were in and out of the hospital so frequently with her seizures. And the combination of seizures and medications and everything robbed her of speech, robbed her of a lot of her physical strength, and so on and so forth. So, because of the way that public schools are set up, as much as her school wanted to support her, they could not provide the support that she actually needed, not just to get by, but to thrive. And so we initially took her out with the idea that we would homeschool for a year or two, get her back up to speed, and then reintroduce her. But the homeschool environment and being able to teach her exactly the way she learns, not being under pressure to perform or take a test or be successful in all areas when maybe at this point in time she could only be successful in a few areas, really gave her back her self confidence and her self esteem, which were critical factors in her overall success through the years.
Oh, definitely. I think that's an important point. It's not that our kids can't do certain things, but perhaps not at the pace or, as you mentioned, under pressure to perform a certain way. So they don't fit neatly in a box. But there's a lot of untapped potential, I think, in a lot of our loved ones, including Emily. Uh, I wanted you to kind of expound a little bit on some of her successes and accomplishments and plans for the future, because she's very, uh, I think some of the activities I know she's participated in are very impressive for anyone, neurotypical or not.
Well, she's always been the driving factor behind how we study and what we study. And we tend to follow kind of an immersive learning pattern where we will pick one subject to do a deep dive on at the beginning of the school year, and we'll just stick with it. And I add in all of the subject matter to that one thing that she wants to learn. Like, for example, she started equine therapy at the age of 8, and is absolutely head over heels in love with horses, wants to be a horse trainer, wants to spend her life in a barn. And so we spent an entire year where I got a curriculum that was tied to equine science, but it was there's barn math. Math is something she struggles with, but this teaches you how many bales of hay a horse eats and how many bales of hay you need to order and how much that costs. And so she's learning math in a practical sense. And so she has an emotional investment because she wants to make sure that her horses are fed, but she's getting the academic structure, but in a way that she can be successful learning it. And so we've done that with just about every subject area, and we've been able to travel. We've been able to do things that she's driving the success on, and her investment is a lot stronger in that. As a result, she is now working with an organization called Duo Dogs, Do Unto Other Assistance Dogs, and she is working on becoming a certified service dog trainer.
That's
And
great.
she's worked with vocational rehab in placements like in a barn, and her next placement will likely be at a doggy daycare and things like that because that's where her passion lies. And in allowing her to explore her passions while building in the other life skills that she needs, she's just able to be more successful overall.
definitely make it more meaningful and engaging. So I think that's great, and I know she's going to be successful at that as well. Um, Let me ask you, first we'll look back and then we'll look ahead. But so looking back, um, what advice would you give yourself, let's say 10, 15 years ago, when you were first starting this journey with Emily? What advice would you give a parent in those shoes? Perhaps suspecting something, not totally having all the answers, maybe having some diagnoses, but you're like, but yeah, that doesn't really, encapsulate everything. Like you know that there's some missing piece, regardless of, let's just say you're beginning your journey, perhaps with one diagnosis and certain behaviors or medical or challenges. So what would you give your advice to yourself or someone in your shoes about 15 years ago?
Well, I think that's actually pretty easy, and it actually ties back to my son. He was diagnosed with ADHD and being highly gifted with a 148 IQ when he was in first or second grade. And I knew that there was something else going on. But when you sit in a room with all these people with all these advanced level college degrees and they're telling you that they know more about your child than you do, you believe them. So I think the biggest lesson that I learned was to never stop questioning, and to pay attention to my child more than I pay attention to the quote experts. Um, I've had to learn this lesson the hard way, and I don't think I'm alone as a parent. I have to trust myself as my child's greatest advocate. There is no expert, regardless of their credentials, that will know or love my child the way I do or as deeply as I do. So I listen to my children and I let them guide my decisions because I have to do what is best for them. And when I first started homeschooling, I knew nothing about it, and I went to bed for 2 years every night thinking to myself, I'm going to ruin her life. What possible credentials do I have to teach a child, never mind a child whose needs are as great as hers,
Hmm. Yeah.
anything about life?
And here you are.
And
So,
here I am.
yep,
So
yep.
I
And
say
you're
trust
helping others
yourself
and
and
teaching
trust your
others.
children,
Yeah.
and take listen to the advice of experts, listen to the advice of others that have gone before you, but chart your own journey.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I think that's important, to trust your gut, as you said, um and to that your journey may be into uncharted waters. You're making it, you know um basically a la carte, catering to your child's interests, and depending on the different health, the different stages and ages. So what do you see as Emily's greatest needs in the coming decade?
Well, I think the challenge that we live with every day is that Emily lives with one foot in the special needs world, requiring significant supports. Um, but a huge chunk of her is living in the broader world where she really yearns to participate fully. And until society as a whole fully integrates the needs of individuals like her, this balancing act that she's required to do between participation and observation will stay a challenge for her and for others like her. But it's a challenge we meet every day with determination and with hope.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's definitely room for community integration, for all of our kids, regardless of what they want to do. And I'm hopeful that as we continue on this journey, more and more doors will open, just because we have different generations that have now been exposed to different, autism awareness and other such efforts. Um, so I do think we can look to the future with hope, and not just ourselves, but others are learning to look past labels. Um, so any any other comments or words of encouragement you'd like to have our listeners take to heart as they continue their journeys? Any words of advice, wisdom, anything you'd like to share with them? Um,
Don't tell my kids that I'm being asked for advice. No, seriously, I think that we all need to reject the notion that autism is merely a disability. I think that, over the years, in an effort to make our kids feel better, to make us feel better, I think we put all different kinds of descriptors out there. But I think that we just need to kind of drop the shells and embrace the unique perspectives that our children bring. They are treasures and they offer invaluable gifts every day to the entire world. Obviously, there are difficult days. There are days where you want to shut the door, sit on the floor and cry with a nice big 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 glass of wine. But those days are overshadowed very easily by the victories, by the smiles that you weren't expecting, by the light of understanding when a connection is made, when, your child accomplishes something that you were always told they couldn't, and you knew they could. And then that one day that accomplishment is made. And those are the days that you live for.
Well said. I just want to thank you for being with us today, and I appreciate um, your journey, and Emily, who I know personally, and I know we've learned a lot ourselves, in the last decade or so as our paths have crossed. And I hope that we can continue to help others, equip them, and as you said, give them hope. That there may be difficult days or ages or stages, but that there's joy, and each of our children, regardless of age, whether minors, whether adults already, young adults, or beyond, have something to contribute, whether it be, within the family or outside of the walls of the home, in different education or employment, spheres. I think a lot of our situations have basically sparked a lot of entrepreneurial spirit, a lot of entrepreneurial
Mhm.
enterprises. And I think that sounds something that Emily has tapped into, with the Duo Dogs, and the equine science interest. There's a lot of good work to be done in those areas.
She
Um,
loves a paycheck.
yeah. Yeah, of course. Money motivates them. It's not just money. What you could do with money, what you could buy,
Exactly.
so it's not just, earning a paycheck, but the satisfaction of having, contributed and being paid, for some work, and what you could do with that. So I definitely agree. A paycheck is important, but it's really just a symbol of what you've done and what you can do with that. So I think that's a great way to end our show for now. You had something else to say? You wanted to?
I was just going to say it's also a way to say, Mommy, you can't tell me what I can buy at the store. I have my own money.
That's right. That's
But
right.
she's learning the value of that money because it's
Exactly.
her money, and it's something that you can't teach writing math facts on a piece of paper.
Well, good point. Well made. Well, I look forward to following you back up in another couple of years when Emily is done with her dual dog program, and maybe she can tell us herself, about her new job or employment, and how she's helping others by doing the dual dog training. So we look forward to that. And again, thank you, and
You
have a great rest of the month, and I'm sure I'll see you again soon.
absolutely have a wonderful day, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening. We'd love for you to join the conversation by sharing your thoughts and experiences in the comments section. Your voice and participation make this community stronger. And don't forget to follow us for more stories, insights, and resources.